Emily, thank you for having me on the Soul Collective podcast. It is my delight.
Oh, awesome. Well, I have to tell you, I'm going to share a little bit about how I came across your work, and then I'm going to share your bio and we'll get into our conversation. But it was really a magical experience. I was up in at Omega Institute in
Yes.
New York. Yeah, and your book that I have right here, The Chiron Effect, it literally jumped off the bookshelf into my
Wow.
hands. Yeah,
Wow. Oh my gosh.
I know. And it was like 11 o'clock at night. The bookstore was about to close, and I just sat down on the floor and I started reading. And of course, listeners who have listened to the show for a while know that I love Chiron and I love learning about it. And so reading your book was just a deep exploration and journey. And so I'm so grateful to have you on the show and to be able to explore all of these topics together.
Thank you. That brings up like tears of gratitude hearing that. Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
yes, and let me share with listeners. So, Lisa is a licensed therapist, host of All Things Therapy podcast. She's a glass artist and author of The Chiron Effect, Healing Our Core Wounds Through Astrology, Empathy, and Self Forgiveness, which was endorsed by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. Amazing. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome. Thank you for this space.
Yeah, so I want to ask you, I'm so curious, like your path as a therapist, like how did you even come across astrology? How did that become such an integral part of your work?
Emily, it's been evolutionary, as I think for most of us, when we are curious, when we're seekers, when we ask either consciously with our words or with our heart, with our inner communication to the universe, to God, to source, just wanting to really make more sense of our lives and why are we here, really wanting to go deeper into what we came here for. And that's what led me to be a therapist. I entered therapy when I was 21 to understand some of the wounding I experienced as a younger person. And that journey of being a client in therapy caused me to want to be a therapist. I learned, like, this is what I want to do with my life to help people understand themselves and their patterns. And I have been a licensed therapist for 22 years, and it was about 8 years ago that astrology and alternative healing methods like Reiki healing, quantum healing, and awareness of the quantum field, how we're an electromagnetic field. And though we can't see that with our eyes, it really is such a big part of our everyday lives as far as you listen, just think about people you see, strangers in the street. Some people you're kind of drawn to, even physically, and others you notice you might walk more around them on the street. And that really speaks to one's electromagnetic field, which is comprised of the thoughts that we think in our own minds actually carry a vibration that's measurable. And that's like emitting from us all the time. And like thinking like hearted people, we tend to gravitate towards those beings, those people, and others we just kind of are repelled. And I've just started to educate myself, Emily, more about this. And it led to just hearing in meditation about Chiron and feeling really prodded. Have you had the experience where the universe wants you to get something, it just keeps like showing up
Yes.
and coming up? That's how it was for me. And it led me to about a 3 year process and writing, learning more about Chiron and how helpful it is to understand where we source some of our patterns. The thoughts that we think repetitively become our beliefs, and those beliefs dictate our actions and our behaviors, what we do in our lives and what we're scared to do. And I was really wanting to know how to help myself go beyond my fears as well as help clients not be held back from the things in our past, especially when there's been trauma and abuse, like in my background, how to really heal and go beyond that and really break those patterns and such. And that's what Chiron helps us to do by understanding one of 12 areas of vulnerability, even deep core wounding, so that we can expand beyond that. And I'm curious what you're thinking because I see you nodding your head like, yes.
Yes, I love it. Well, first of all that you've shared, so beautifully. And what it's bringing up for me is, my own personal journey with overcoming, wounds and really doing that deep inner work. And
Mhm.
that's why Chiron has been such a powerful tool for me to really better understand myself, understand my own healing journey. And I love what you're sharing about just really this understanding on a deeper level that our thoughts create our reality. Because I think that was like the first thing in my spiritual awakening was like, oh my gosh, like I am creating my reality. And
Yeah.
all of these subconscious beliefs that are contributing to, the people in my reality and, the experiences that I'm having. And that was such a powerful wake up call.
Yes. And Emily, tell me how you feel about this because this is a thought I used to kind of push against like no, no way. But in recent months it's become more apparent to me, especially in writing a book about Chiron, which pretty much says that this is a pattern that I'm going to say in air quotes I came in with, but what I've come to realize is we wrote this. Like
Oh
we
yeah.
didn't come into anything. Like we created this. Like this is ours. We wrote this. And it sounds like yes, that resonates with you as well.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
love that you bring that through because, we can look at it from a collective perspective and look at what we're, clearing ancestrally and,
Mhm.
and collectively. But then also, a lot of those themes we see carried out in terms of where Chiron is, as we're moving through. Like, for example, Chiron is in Aries right now.
Yes.
We're just about to have, this big Aries full moon on the
Yes.
conjunct
Yes.
Chiron. And so, we can look at these themes that happen, and I'd love to get into some of the themes, especially with, Chiron and Aries. I think that your Chiron is in Aries.
It is. It is. Where is yours?
Mine is in Gemini.
Okay. A core wounding having to do with empathetic attunement.
Yes, and sharing, speaking, having confidence in delivering gifts and sharing publicly. That's probably the essence, I would say, of that wounding and how it's manifested in my life.
And look at you as a podcaster and a teacher naturally healing that placement. And it's so interesting, even His Holiness the Dalai Lama, his Chiron is in Aries. And look at how he has transcended and transformed and heard and seen and respected. And I'm perceiving the same for you, really using this area that there could have been some confusion around as a gift that you share with the world to be more of yourself in the world.
Absolutely. And that's why I feel like I have this deep love affair with Chiron because I think it's like the wounding is within that is the gift and the blessing if we're, able to go in and explore and do that deeper work.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so I'd love to, dive in. I mean, just for those who are maybe not familiar with what Chiron is, like, can you give us a brief
Yeah.
overview?
Absolutely, Emily. Chiron is the healer of the zodiac. And in Greek mythology, Chiron was a centaur, half man, half horse. He taught medicine, pharmacy, botany. He was a revered teacher and mentor in Greek mythology about all of the healing arts. And he was wounded by a poisonous arrow. And in that experience of being physically wounded, he really embodies our human duality that we're both physical and eternal. And he asked, he still functioned and taught, but he was really in pain as well. And I think that speaks to moments and times in our lives where things do wound us emotionally or physically, and we're looking for a way through it. And truly the way through it is to pause, long enough to really attend to that part of ourselves that's been hurt instead of just getting over it. There's such a message, I think, in our culture. I know I experienced it, to just get over that. Like, people are uncomfortable a lot of the time with difficult feelings. Even you see it when someone passes away. I have, like, what do I say? Like, it can just be so uncomfortable. You feel like you're going to say the wrong thing when I think intuitively, I'm so sorry, I don't even know what to say. And that can be the best thing to share, is just, your own authenticness, because certainly when we're going through grief and when we're going through losses, it kind of bypasses language and words. And sometimes we don't even know what to say going through it. So it can be helpful to just be with someone in grief, as well as being with yourself when you're going through painful things, just pausing to experience what has happened in a healthy way. So those feelings don't get kind of shoved away and then start coming up sideways and causing problems in your life or health problems in your body.
1000%. And I love that invitation to really soften and give this spaciousness to whatever emotions are arising. And especially if there is a sense of moving through difficult emotions, there can be a tendency to want to move through or push aside, or I'll deal with this later. And it's really in the welcoming and allowing that we're able to move through in a more graceful way.
And be, yes, and have empathy for ourselves. That's the empathy component that my book really invites you to explore for yourself in your own mind, to just sit and even schedule a time. If you are at work, busy raising kids, all the responsibilities most people have, to schedule with intention. Okay, I can't be with this part of myself right now, but I can later tonight, I can tomorrow at 8 p.m. And even to schedule that, you'll feel your body kind of start to relax, because you're sending the message to yourself that I'm going to attend to you, I'm going to be with this. And that can help you, again, stay really healthy in your life.
That's such a great tip, because maybe
Thank you.
we're in a session, or we're in,
Yeah.
like in
Or
the
doing a
midst,
podcast.
we're doing a podcast, and
Yeah.
it's like we're just really signaling to that inner being, our inner self, that we care and that we'll be there, and give the love and attention that it deserves.
Absolutely, Emily. And even that younger part of ourself kind of came up as you were just speaking. Sometimes it's a younger part within us that's triggered, that's stimulated, that's like, "Ooh, ouch," or like, "Oh, like that really hurt." And it's important to acknowledge that part of ourselves, because there's information that he, she, they has for us.
Yes, yes. So in your practice, do you actively work with Chiron with clients, or what are some of the areas that you focus on?
Sure, I when a client comes in, what's most important to you? And then I'll often ask to have, when I ask, what's your address, your date of birth, I'll ask place of birth, and if the person has it, their time of birth, so that I can go investigate their Chiron to get kind of a blueprint to weave those pieces in as it's appropriate. So I do like to start where someone is, versus like, this is my template. This is, and just so it's helpful. I want the information to really serve the need of the individual I'm working with. So I definitely at the right time want to bring that in, so it'll help them have more awareness.
Mm, I love that. What are some practices you mentioned, really setting aside time, which I think is so important. What are some other practices that you recommend to really go in and explore wounds, or, triggers that are coming up, and, perhaps some tools that we can use?
Sure, Emily. I think what I've seen in my own life and in the lives of others is that we have to really believe something's going to work for us to actually set aside that time. And when you haven't done something, we can be skeptical. Like, I don't know if that's going to work, and I'm busy, and I don't know that I even want to try that. And I know sometime in the therapeutic world, it's called resistance, client resistance. But I think resistance, I have a lot of empathy for that because it's when you haven't bought in to something being effective, and it kind of makes sense. Think about being a consumer. We typically aren't going to purchase something unless we believe it's going to benefit our lives. And it's the same way with these emotional tools, spiritual tools, like, for instance, meditation. You just led us in a beautiful grounding and clearing meditation before coming on the podcast. And that's something now I'm sold on. But a few years ago, I wasn't. And I told myself, you know what, Lisa, we're going to do a 2-week experiment with meditation to see, and I'm going to set aside 5 minutes, and this is an experiment. And if you don't like it, you never have to do this again. But then I showed up for myself. I scheduled it into my calendar, and it was less than a week than the 5 minutes. It was a 4-minute guided meditation on YouTube, in fact, by the Honest Guys. It's a morning uplift that I still listen to, in fact. And I expanded that 4 minutes to like 10 minutes because I felt better. My days started going better. Circumstances started to change for the better. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, holy shit, meditation, like, it really works. And
Yeah.
so, I invite you to try something new like meditation, to start with a guided meditation, be it on YouTube, or if you subscribe to someone through their email list, they might be sending you meditations to really set aside 4 to 5 minutes if you can at the start of your day. It used to be at the end of my day, but now I definitely start my day because I just want to align. I want help from the universe. I want help from God, from source, to really create my day in like the best it can be. So I find if you really start in some fashion, for you as well, Emily, do you start?
Yeah.
I sense you do.
I do, and it's interesting as you're sharing, I'm just kind of reflecting on my own journey of meditation because similar to your sharing, I feel like I really needed to experiment with it to see, because I was hearing all these things about meditation, and it's like anytime I sat down and tried, my mind was really active, at that point in time. And so it took me a while to like really get into my own practice and find it, the benefits of it. And I actually recently went through a period of time that was almost about a year where I was meditating for an hour to an hour and a half a
That's
day.
amazing.
Yeah, and
What
like
happened? What
what
happened in your life
amazing.
as a result? Yeah.
I mean, so much peace, so much just joy and spaciousness. And I don't mean just in that hour, hour and a half. I mean, throughout the entire day. It just
Hmm.
completely transforms your reality. And so I'm not, carving out quite as much time right in this now moment, but I still know like, okay, this today feels like I need a little bit longer, or, like, those days when you
Yes.
need to attune to your energy.
You start to crave it, is what I
Yeah.
hear you speaking to. It becomes such a source of feeling good that you start to really crave that meditation time. And the thoughts that you mentioned, it's such a good point because that even sometime happens now for me. I had found a place where meditation was, it just felt so good. And then about 5, 6 months ago, my cat that I've had for 17 years suddenly passed away unexpectedly. And when I tell you, Emily, I was a beginner's mind starting from square one, no exaggeration. I could barely sit for 2 minutes in meditation, having gotten up to like an hour at times. And I was so shocked, but it was because he used to sit on my lap. I didn't realize for all these years as I meditated and just his purring and his heartbeat, like, would really syncopate with mine. And in the absence of that, meditation actually felt terrifying because I was so aware of his absence that,
Mm,
like, I have had to start over. I was like, "Okay, Lisa, you're starting over. It's okay. This is like the beginner's mind and with all the racing thoughts." And I was like, "You know what? If you get through 2 minutes, that's a success." And so
mhm.
starting over was even such a gift and lesson because it put me back in touch with how hard it can be to cultivate this new skill because our minds and our bodies, sometimes it really feels painful to sit there. But
Yeah,
that's where you start, and it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And what that brings up in your sharing is just the idea that, like, sometimes the tools that we've cultivated for so long, in a given moment or season of our lives are going to be different. We might need to modify, or they might
Yes.
not work as well as they have in, other times in the past. And that's why I feel like just this deep exploration of what are the tools that really work for you, and being open to them looking at and feeling a different way, whether it's like, okay, I'm going to do a walking meditation, or I'm
Yes,
going to do
yes.
self.
That helped me, Emily, walking in a park in New Orleans, Audubon Park. It's beautiful without music, and I felt Jiggy, my cat, like that worked. I did that every day. And
Hmm.
it was like a 30-minute walk without music, and I felt some peace again. Absolutely yes, to a walking meditation. I felt led to journal some more, which it had been a while since I had done that. So journaling, writing, as well as I've started to go to acupuncture, which has been really I did that this morning before we met today, and I had a spiritual experience. It was my 3rd session, and I was really able to relax and drop into at first, I thought I was cold, and then I realized I felt this energy pulsing through me, and it through all the needles that were in my body, like, this energy that I felt simultaneously super relaxed and also very energized. It was so surreal. And when the doctor came in, it had been about an hour, and I felt like, oh my gosh, like I could stay there longer. And so, acupuncture, just to try different things, try Reiki if you feel like go online. I love meetup.com to just look for what your body energetically is like. Oh, that's interesting. Like that's a yes for you to try out.
Yes, I know. And there's so many different modalities. One that I have been loving recently is EFT.
Oh, yeah, tapping.
Yeah, but it's so
Yes.
interesting that you bring up acupuncture. I don't go on a regular basis, but I had like a little slight muscle pull earlier this week, and I went immediately the next day and had, such a beautiful experience with acupuncture and cupping and and massage.
Yes, cupping. Absolutely, yes. And Emily, I went because I really love fitness. That's been one of the tools in my toolbox. And I used to be a spin instructor, and now I just work out for fun. And I really love weightlifting. I love feeling and being strong, but I have overdone it kind of excessively using that one tool. So we could even take a good tool and use it to where it's like, oh, our bodies or minds are like, wait a minute. And I developed a pain in my shoulder and in my foot. And that's what led me to acupuncture. And the doctor said, he explained it so well. He said, when you're lifting weights, like you're shortening the muscle. And if you don't elongate it, if you don't take time to stretch it, say with practices like yoga or just stretching, you actually start losing power because you're not elongating it to compensate for the shortening it. And so that's what it for example, is it was so overused. And I actually went back to yoga 2 nights ago. And so I feel like I'm on this journey, Emily, of reinventing my toolbox, kind of reassessing it, reappropriating
Yes,
things.
I
And you
love
might
it.
find yourself in that place in your life sometime. And just to be open.
Yeah, such good advice.
Thank you.
I usually ask at the beginning of conversations, can you share with listeners what your astrology is, like perhaps your big three, and then
Oh, sure.
where
Yeah.
Chiron is in your chart?
Yeah, I'd love to know yours as well, Emily. So
Yeah.
my sun, I'm a Gemini sun sign, and then I'm an Aries moon, an Aries rising, an Aries in Chiron. There's so much Aries, so much fire, and then Gemini, all these thoughts and air. So for me, it's like, oh my gosh, sometime my mind is so fast that like my life, I feel like can't keep up, and I've had to learn to to learn to be more comfortable and less frustrated with myself and with things unfolding. What because I know you really specialize in astrology. What
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It's so
Yeah.
fun to see. And, lots of air and fire energy, which is, fast moving and passionate. And yeah, and it's like the balance with meditation and the, receptive stillness is probably such good medicine. I for me, my sun is in Virgo. I'm a Virgo
Okay.
rising, and then Pisces moon.
Wow. Okay, and then Chiron and Gemini.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, with all that Virgo, so I'm thinking order, routine, health being important to you. And then
Yeah.
Pisces moon, spirituality and like deep things, alternative things.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I have Mercury and Venus in Virgo too. So got a lot of,
Wow. Oh my gosh, lots of Virgo.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It's so interesting.
It is. Yeah. And I'm so curious to ask you with Chiron and Aries in the first house for you,
Mhm.
how has that felt for you? Like in terms of, the archetype of Chiron, what has that brought up for you?
Actually, it was so relieving. That's what made me want to take the time, energy, and finances to write my book so others I made so much sense. Chiron and Aries speaks to a core wounding and vulnerability and your sense of value and worth, your self-esteem. And in the first house, it really has to do with yourself, your own self-esteem, your own view of yourself. And for people with this Chiron and Aries, there's typically been a lot of people pleasing patterns in your life, sourcing love and wanting to offer value. So on one hand, it's such a strength. You really want to offer value. You want to show up for people and things. People can count on you. And at the same time, you feel like you're never quite enough. Even when really good things manifest for you, successes, you're successful. People look at you and are like, oh my gosh, you're doing so well. You're so successful, but you don't feel it. And I think we really see this in the world with I don't know Mr. Kodak who owned Kodak camera if his Chiron was in Aries, but I know he was so successful and then killed himself, not feeling, valuable or worthy. And so we see how this can be so painful for people, such a dichotomy between like how you're viewed outwardly and what you're actually doing, and yet how you feel within. And it's so important to bring these two in alignment. And Chiron really helps you with that, be it Chiron and Taurus, core wounding by neglect. There's often sexual abuse or trauma in this placement. And you might have been neglected because a parent had an addiction and they weren't able to care for you and tend to your emotional needs. So you learn this pattern of neglecting yourself. And we see how deep that can go to cause serious emotional and disorders and problems and depression and such. So it's so I think important to understand where Chiron is so you can support yourself in that area.
Wow, Lisa, that was such an amazing overview of
Thank you.
Chiron and Aries and the energies, and just really getting in touch with the nuances. I feel like for each sign there's so much like deepening and discovery, and your book is such a great tool to help people understand the energies of Chiron in each of the signs and each of the houses. I'm curious, would you be able to, I know you shared
Yeah,
a little bit about Taurus, could you go through the signs and share a little overview?
absolutely. I'd love to. And I'd love for you to throw in things that of significance with each placement since I know you know so much about it as
Sure.
well. And also so I'm a therapist. I'm not an astrologer, and so I approach Chiron from a psychological perspective, bringing personal responsibility to the table, how we have choice, we have freedom to learn the skills to be able to change whatever ways Chiron has and is affecting us, that we can learn the tools to change our patterns. And so I give 4 or 5 takeaway steps that you can start today for each placement of Chiron, as well as affirmations. And I felt like I really lived Chiron in every one of the 12 signs during the 3 years of writing and researching. Like
Wow.
in Gemini, this empathetic attunement wounding, where you're misperceived, where people and yet it's like it's translated into Chinese or German, and what you get back from others often doesn't reflect what you feel like you were saying. And so there's can be a lot of miscommunication, and this person might have been bullied in school growing up, or you might have been the bully to compensate not being picked on. So there's something here having to do with communication and its styles and really working to be heard as you intended to be heard, to communicate and be received, because it's so frustrating, right? To be misunderstood. It's like you feel almost like you're not there. It's like this invisible feeling, I think, that it can cause.
Yes, and I've spoken with others that have the placement of Chiron and Gemini, and oftentimes, what it has been shared is around, a hesitation with visibility of sharing and speaking and, communicating gifts.
Right. And we're meant here to communicate. Like that's when we feel like we're really connecting with
Yes,
others. So it can cause like disconnection to not have that go well for you.
right. It's like that throat chakra block.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. And then Chiron in Cancer speaks to core wounding by abandonment. And in a lot of the people I've worked with and friends I've talked to, this was a literal parent figure leaving and starting a new family, for example. Or your caretaker might have abandoned you because they had an addiction. And your home, this really has to do with your home, like where you grew up as a child and the home that you've created in your own life now, and not abandoning yourself. Even this placement can be where people could struggle with suicidal ideations and feelings. Because when you think about abandonment, it's so very painful with the loneliness that can come up. This can also come up when losses happen. And in this part of the book is where I talk about correlating the chakra system with the stages of grief, the stages that we cycle through, which, and it's in no particular order. It can happen in any order, but uh, denial, like disbelief, shock. I can't even believe this happened. It's hard to have the words. You might feel there's an anger phase. You feel angry. There's the depression and sadness that goes along with grief. There's bargaining, like maybe if I would have done something, this wouldn't have happened. And then you start working your way into acceptance and
Mm,
then even finding meaning. And I got permission, received permission from David Kessler, who worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who created these steps years ago. I received permission to correlate their system with the chakra system, which was such an honor
that
to,
is.
yeah, be able to sense in, yes, like you can absolutely publish and use this, but always crediting and sourcing Dr. Ross and David Kessler, who are just pioneers in this field of grief and loss and
Mm.
making meaning. David's latest book is on finding meaning. He actually created a sixth stage of grief to help us heal.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that process. That's so
Yeah.
helpful. And I'd love to know too, what is the medicine that you would recommend for
With
cancer? Cancer.
Chiron and Cancer,
Yeah.
it really has to do with looking at so much about your home, the physical home that you have now, whatever it is, an apartment, living with someone, it doesn't matter, but to really make that space something, clear out the clutter is one of the tips I give, because that could be an issue you have. Clear out that clutter, donate it, sell it, whatever, just get it out of your space so that you can create a space that you want to be in. The sense of home and permanency is really important for you. And to learn that home is wherever you are. Home is within your own heart, to really make your own self a home, because that way you can be anywhere. Often we're in transition, like we're living in one place, but we desire, something better. So it's really about learning to be comfortable. Like I'm at home now, and feeling into that more as you're creating that more desirable home that you want, finding that peace.
Yes, I love that so much. It's like that inner energetic security, whether it's in your physical environment or just, that inner sense of security that helps you to maybe take like a little step outside of your comfort zone.
Yes, Emily, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. So we
I-
went, yeah, Gemini,
It's
Cancer.
and now it's Leo. Chiron and Leo speaks to, and I'd like to say I see this as a spectrum, core wounding. So vulnerability up to and including core wounding. For some of you listening or watching, this might be an area of vulnerability where it's like, okay, like I stumble here sometime, but it's not profoundly affecting
Yes.
me. And for others, like for me, this was definitely a wound in my sense of value and worth that I really had to spend some time pressing that pause button, going back to the beginning and healing with intention, putting my attention upon my intention. And I still do. It's kind of like every day cultivating that I'm valuable, that I'm worthy. And, I see these deeper layers being revealed, and you might really feel into a place of, yeah, I've healed this part of myself. And then you might have an awareness at another time, like, oh, there's still something there to heal more deeply. And for others of you, again, this is more kind of just a surface vulnerability or prick. So just be aware of that. And in Leo, it has to do with create so creative. And often you will put your own creativity to the side to help someone else with their projects. And you might secretly feel exhausted or outwardly exhausted, and maybe even a little resentful that others aren't doing more for themselves. So you might want to look at how you could be contributing to that dynamic. That since you do love to help others create, you might need to set some boundaries and say, you know what, I love doing this for and with you, but I actually want to get something off the ground. So would you do this, like delegate?
Yes. I love that of putting your creativity first. And I feel like
Yeah.
another aspect of this wounding may be, the need or the desire to have validation when it comes to creative expression and really letting go of any
Yeah.
need for external validation or approval and just,
Permission or
yes,
permission.
yeah, and just being able to share for the love of.
And your pleasure. This
Mhm.
placement too is about pleasure. It's about sexuality. It's about play, to really learn, identify what you like, what lights you up. And then, asking for that or changing. Hey, I know I've kind of gone along with this for a while, but it really hasn't made me happy. So it might be kind of being open and vulnerable to share with others. I know I've been doing this a long time, but I think I thought I had to, but, like, I really don't want to anymore,
Mhm.
and the people actually, they want to support you, they just don't know often until you start to speak up. So to take that step.
Yes, love that. And then,
Yeah.
you know,
Virgo.
Chiron and Virgo.
Chiron and Virgo. So this has to do with your physical health and associated routines that you tend to somaticize. And actually, Chiron loves the placement of Virgo since Chiron is the healer, and Virgo is so much about healing and service work and like really making this world a better and more organized place that flows. Virgo is so good at that when aligned, right? Would that be true? Being
Yes.
that this is so much of your your
It
makeup?
yeah, and, Chiron is the ruler along with Mercury of Virgo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so to really, like, not neglect specifically your gynecologist appointments, your doctor's appointments, to really be about your preventative health care so you're not putting it off and waiting until something is truly a health problem versus just a health issue that can be treated more readily. And interestingly, conversely, the other side of this coin is hypochondria, which I don't think we hear a lot about nowadays. I feel like I used to hear more about that in therapy 20 years ago, hypochondria, but certainly there are people like hyper focus in a fearful way is how I look at that about their health, and think about how painful that is to be in fear about your health. And it really is about centering and aligning your health with getting out ahead of it and getting some information to help you be less in fear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Neptune also can be one of those placements where there can be sort of an exaggeration of fear around health-related concerns. So I
Okay, I
think,
didn't know that. Okay,
yeah,
that's where you can bring in really the astrology to this conversation. Wow.
yeah. So what would you say the medicine is for Chiron and Virgo?
It's really taking care of yourself in physical ways, like looking at your diet is more than just what you eat, even like what's your mental diet? What are you consuming? Like your audio, your music, your TV or movies, to really look at consumption in its deeper layers, because that cause it, like what we input in every way beyond food and drink, the basics and exercise and meditation, is like, what are you listening to? And that includes people that you lend your ear to, like the people you're closest to. Are they really helping you feel better about yourself and life? Or does that need to kind of be shifted a bit and changed around for yourself?
Yes, I love that. Rituals, routines, how you take care of your physical body, how you really show up for yourself so that you're able to show up for others.
And even, I'm just gonna say this, Emily, because it came up. I've seen in the stores a lot there's all this, kinds of water we can drink, but that brand Liquid Death. And I know when it first came out and I saw that canned water, I didn't know it was water. I was like, what is that? Like that's like I just felt like an energetic, like, no way. Like I am not even touching that can. And then I learned it was some kind of really high quality water. And I
Mm,
thought, okay, this is marketing. Like maybe some people think this is so cool, but to me, the vibration is so low to
mm,
drink something called Liquid Death. And even I have a young client, and she told me of her own volition. She's like, Lisa, I've noticed that I used to listen to the Suicide Boys, and I'm changing. Like I'm feeling like I don't want that music, like the vibration, like something about it. As I've been in therapy, it like I realize I think that music has caused me to feel like suicidal. And so even just to pay attention to
yeah.
like these kind of things, it's not by accident.
Absolutely. I mean, that really is numerology, is that words and numbers have an energetic vibration. And so, really
Yeah.
attuning to what the frequency is, if it's in resonance with your own frequency. I love that. So, so
And
helpful.
I love the quote, I forgot who said it, that spelling, they call it spelling because we cast spells. And it was so profound, like spelling, we're spelling with our words. And to be as mindful as you can. I know I'm constantly kind of cleaning up what I'm saying. And Louise Hay was so good about this. I know David Kessler, that I spoke about earlier, he was such close friends with Louise Hay. And when I had him on my podcast, he said that even being friends with Louise, if he'd say something like, I can't wait to see you, she's like, well, David, yes, you can. And like she was so meticulous about her language, but look at this prolific life that she lived. Hay House publications, books published in basically every language there is, and worldwide known as a teacher and a healer, healed herself from cancer. So there's
Yeah.
so much to look at there. How far do you want to go with this? Just as an experiment to see maybe how good can my life get by cleaning up my language, my music, my television, etc.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing, Lisa. I love that. I mean, and that word meticulous really connects with the energy of
A
Virgo.
Virgo, it does. It does.
Yeah, awesome. So let's move to Libra.
Yeah, Libra, this speaks to a vulnerability and wounding in one's personal independence. And I think how this can show up and hurt you is like you're so easygoing, typically like seeking, like just going with the flow. Where do you want to go eat? Well, where do you want to go eat? And at first that can be an awesome person to be around. Oh, you're so easy. But sometimes you might get labeled as like being a chameleon, because you might go with the flow to avoid conflict when you really do have a preference, but either that preference is out of your awareness, like you really don't know what you want. So, yeah, whatever you want to do, kind of sourcing your independence to someone else that you're close to. Or it might be fear of like, what if I want to do something they don't want to do? And then, you don't want to hang out with me. So, it might be to mitigate, fear even of how to navigate friendships. So, it's really finding your personal independence. A way you can do this is like somebody you're close to that you can just be honest. Like, look, I really want to address my my preferences, being independent. Can you like maybe help me with this? Like next time we make plans to go eat, how about if can you give me three places and then let me choose? So you start to exercise this muscle. Because sometimes, like I know for myself, Emily, growing up in a family wasn't given choices, I suddenly was an adult and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was the person like, what do you want to do? And that was authentic because I didn't know. So I had to learn, what do I like? Where do I like to eat? What and really, like, it's kind of scary to realize you don't know. So this might be where you are right now, but it's okay because you can learn your priorities, your preferences, and start to speak them.
Love that. That is such good advice. I can absolutely relate to that journey of
Yeah.
really being able to vocalize, what you want and understand that that's a priority.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So from there we move to Scorpio.
Scorpio, Chiron and Scorpio speaks to this core wounding and vulnerability in the experience and expression of power,
Mm,
personal power or power that's been exerted over you, for instance, in childhood. Might there have been a parent, a teacher, an authoritarian? This might be your relationship to authority, even. It might be one like you rebel against, like not liking to be controlled, or conversely, like maybe you do. Like maybe you find yourself really like, say like the military, I think of, you like serving, just, this is everything's laid out and you just follow that. And that might be ego congruent, egocentric, like that's cool with you. But when it's not, is where you start to feel a problem or an issue with power and even your own power, learning how to use it, meaning your magnetism, your influence, like the way, people like you. And you might use your sexuality, for instance, to your charm, and that can work well. But is that really authentic power? Like, versus, using your voice and your intelligence and other ways of experiencing power in your life. Can
yes.
you add anything to that?
Well, I feel like the energy of Scorpio can be private, and really there is such a depth of power that's there and wisdom. And so just this, um, gaining of comfortability in owning your own authentic power.
Mhm.
You're so beautifully sharing. I feel like that is the journey of Chiron and Scorpio.
You know what I think too, using that with some kindness. I remember I wrote, and this is coming to mind, about for this person, it can be really hard to trust and like be vulnerable. That can be very scary for this Chiron and Scorpio individual. And
Yes.
that's where a lot of the power kind of protection, self protection is like, you're not going to get in there, and wound me because you might have been when you were young and that hasn't been healed. So to really do things that require interdependence, that
Mhm.
journey of trust, trusting other people in particular, like that you can be vulnerable and they're not going to hurt you. Like they actually want to love you and know that part of you, to sit with you in it, so you're not alone. So that I'm just remembering is like a big part of this placement.
Yes, beautifully said. I love
Thank you.
that. Oh, so we have a few more. Let's see. So
Yeah.
Sagittarius.
Oh yeah, Sagittarius, Chiron and Sagittarius. It's so interesting. It has to do with a core wounding and truth and illusion, meaning that when you were growing up, like the illusion was presented as truth, and you're so acute at like sensing bullshit. And like this is kind of like the parents that like do what I say, not what I do. And I know that never made sense to me because it's like that doesn't even make sense. Like, how am I supposed to do the right thing when you're not? But somehow when I was growing up, this parenting style somehow like existed and worked, like the baby boomers, like, and so this is like you're really sensitive to that. And this really came out in the Me Too movement, hashtag Me Too, where all these, men perpetrating, horrible sexual crimes against women were revealed. This was Chiron, and this is like a Chiron and Sagittarius thing, where
Mhm.
the illusion is revealed for what it is, instead of this being okay, like it's not. And this is so cool. There's a lot of good to come from this placement of like of exposing lies and deception, and not to be that yourself, to really be, present what's true for you, versus falsehoods,
Yes, yeah. So the ability to sort of discern what is truth, what is deception,
illusion.
and really like prioritize your inner truth. What is
Yeah,
your highest truth? Like really putting that first as you know, a cornerstone guiding you forward.
absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. Okay, so then we move to Capricorn.
Yes, Chiron and Capricorn has to do with a core wounding or vulnerability and responsibility, achievement and success. So Capricorn, this has to do with like in your professional life. Are you the success that you're experiencing is are you okay, I'll start with the let me start with the kind of more there's a shadow. So I've been talking kind of to the shadow aspects and the more positive aspects. So are is someone else stealing credit for your work? This might be like at work, you're really behind the scenes doing so much, but somebody else presents it like they did it without crediting you. And it's so frustrating. You need to stand up about that in some kind of way, like not letting that be okay, that your success is your success. Conversely, the shadow aspect might be is that you kind of steal other people's, work and don't source where it came from. So really being congruent there, like ethical
Mm-hmm.
is what this is about. And responsibility, like you might take too much responsibility, take too much on. So you may need to delegate versus maybe you need to kind of edge up and like do a little more, like be a little more responsible for things and not let other people pick up your slack.
Yes, yeah. So the balance around work, goal setting, really like achieving that which is on your heart
And
to.
even in your family, like how that shows up in your relationships with friends, with your significant other, and in your family. How responsible are you taking on too much responsibility for other people's stuff in your family? Like making excuses for them, maybe, like giving too many passes. Say if somebody like in an alcoholic home, for example, and we tend to make all these excuses for the person to try to like maybe not piss them off or because it's like walking on eggshells. So look at those areas of your personal
Yes.
life.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So our last one is
Last two, Aquarius and then
and
Pisces.
Pisces. Yeah.
Yeah, so Chiron and Aquarius has to do with a core wounding and connection and community where you feel like you don't know where your tribe is. You feel though you might be around a lot of people like we often are in at a party, at a meeting, at work, just walking down the street, we're often surrounded by people, but feeling cut off and kind of lonely. And this can be really painful. So it's about connecting and creating community over aligned values where like meetup.com, if it's active in your city, can be great to meet over like a humanitarian cause, be it like feeding the homeless, something having to do with human rights, like in Iran, for example, right now, what's happening, and really creating friendships and community around issues important to you. That's such a wonderful way to heal this for
I love
yourself.
that. And I feel like, Chiron and Aquarius is about like not feeling like you need to fit inside of the box, you know?
Right? You're out of the box,
Yeah,
typically, right?
exactly. It's like all of the quirky,
Yes.
weird parts are welcome and
Yes.
embrace all of it.
Thank you for raising that point.
Mm, yes.
And then lastly, Chiron and Pisces speaks to this core wounding in self-care and the immaterial world, which is how I chose to phrase like your spiritual connection, your spiritual beliefs or lack thereof. And I believe spirituality can be found in nature. It can be found in animals. So however you conceptualize spirituality, you might be kind of cut off from that. And it's about reconnecting to that sense of something bigger and greater than you that you can trust, that you really believe in, and caring for yourself. This placement, you're so giving, you give so much to your own detriment. And it was interesting when I learned that Mother Teresa, her Chiron was in Pisces, and look how powerfully she served the world and yet still was able to care for herself. So she can be kind of this metaphor of learning the balance between giving from your overflow versus from your depletion.
Ah, yes, that's such a beautiful example. Uh,
Thank you.
Lisa, thank you so much for going through all of the signs of the zodiac and sharing such incredible wisdom. And I really believe that we have elements, of course, of all of the zodiac. So
I
I
do
feel
too.
like, for listeners, as you're going through and sharing, it's like, wow, we might resonate with multiple of the signs that you share.
Yes. And I think sometimes we do. We go through, feeling or being abandoned or neglected. And I've used my book when I've had things come up. Like, what did I say about that wound? And I'll literally read what I wrote because it's hard to remember everything,
Yep.
and like use some of the steps to help myself and the affirmations too.
100%. Yeah, because I love that you offer medicine and ways that we can really work with that energy because whatever we're moving through, there is a medicine there for us that we can work with. And also too, what we kind of started this conversation around is about, Chiron collectively, where that's at from a planetary perspective. And Chiron moves through the signs every, I think, 4 or 5 years. And in Pisces and Virgo, I think it's every 1 year. And so right now we have Chiron in Aries. And, that like collectively can bring up themes around freedom of speech and equal rights and humanitarian issues and things like that. And I feel like we're definitely in freedom. And so I feel like we're definitely seeing those themes have been over the past few years. And I think I might get this date wrong, but I think Chiron moves into Taurus in 2025 July.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'd love to have you on my podcast, All Things
Oh my,
Therapy, in January, so we can continue. Is that cool if we plan that? Because
I
you
would
bring
love
this
that.
wisdom and depth around astrology. So there's a lot for me to learn
Oh yeah,
from
that
you.
would be so much fun. I would love that. And
Awesome.
yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. Well, I would love to give listeners a peek into where they can go deeper with you, whether they want to book a session or, get your books or, just go on a deeper dive. Where can listeners go?
Thank you, Emily. My book is available everywhere books are. The big, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, as well as if you have a favorite local bookstore, you can ask them to order it for you. And I'm at nolatherapy.com. It stands for New Orleans, Los Angeles Therapy. If you want to do a session, I do Zoom sessions with people anywhere that you are. And on social media, I'm at Nola Therapy on Instagram and on YouTube. And just reach out, Lisa at Nola Therapy. I'd love to help out any of your audience.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible, eye-opening conversation. I have learned so much. And any last words that you'd like to leave listeners with?
I think just to really focus on being more gentle and kind in your self talk, to really love yourself some more in the language between your own two ears about yourself and see where that takes you. Gentle, loving, and empathetic messages to encourage yourself.
Beautiful.